The terrorist grip on Kidal is beginning to go thinner and thinner by the day. And what do we have? We have a situation where the Malian Armed Forces have intensified strikes in Kidal to the extent that it is becoming very, very unbearable for the terrorists. And now the terrorists are beginning to make videos. You know, the Malians are continuing their strike intensification, and the Malians have even improved on their strike capability and the Russian African Corps. And you know, the terrorists are now calling on the United Nations, they are calling on the Human Rights Watch, they are calling on all their international partners to come to their rescue. They are saying that the Malian Armed Forces is targeting civilians. I know you are beginning to see some of this propaganda on the social media, you know, a lot of videos. Look at this video. This is how much destruction the terrorists have gotten in Kidal. But they continue to form a propaganda and they want to make you believe that these are civilian targets. But we've seen from the video of the drones and every other thing, you can easily identify that these are terrorists and not civilians. And this is a reality check. This is a show that the terrorists no longer have control in Kidal. And this is not the first time we are hearing an organization that belongs to a terrorist group calling on the civil rights organization inside Mali. You know, even the JNIM did that, courtesy of Bina Diarra. And I asked a very important question at the time. I said, what is the strategic relevance of this civil rights organization inside, you know, the Sahel countries? Most especially, they have they have everything to do with the imperialist agenda. You know, if the JNIM can call on an organization to come to their rescue, definitely you know that that organization has a strategic duty that has nothing to do with the sovereignty and the improvement and the development of that nation. But that is not the only thing we are seeing. One of the representatives of the Malian government in Kidal, who was attacked and almost, you know, unalive by these T groups of the FLA. Fortunately for him, he escaped and he's now giving his account to the public opinion, what he experienced at the hands of these people and what the situation in Kidal is.
So, Sidi El Mehdi Ag Al Baka, let me remind everyone that you are the director of the regional ORTM station in Kidal. You were in Kidal on April 25th. You were a witness, a participant, and even a hostage of these terrorists. What exactly happened?
Thank you very much. You have to understand that on April 25th, 2026, very early in the morning, we were awakened by gunfire exchanges. After 2 hours, we already noticed the presence of armed terrorist and separatist groups inside the city, which greatly complicated our security. After the administrative authorities withdrew to join the camps, we were left trapped inside the city and the armed groups were already right in front of me at my door. But it was around 4 o'clock in the afternoon that they entered my house. They broke through the wall to open the door. They arrested me in front of my family. I can still hear the cries of my children who didn't understand what was happening, but I knew it was going to happen this way. So 2 armed vehicles took me as they were taking control of Kidal toward the social housing market, which is not in use. And over there, a whole series of interrogations began, insults, many things that were hard to accept. Barely had I arrived when one of them handed me a glass of water. They said, "I'm not interested." He said to me, "Don't make it out of wood because it will be your last drink." Everything needed to destabilize a man. But in the meantime, my family informed people in our community. Resourceful individuals got involved, and we were able to reach a compromise to let me stay at the mayor's place for the time being. Because when I was arrested, I wasn't with my cameraman. So while staying at the mayor of Kidal's house, whom I thank, by the way, for his hospitality, I searched for my cameraman until I found him. From there, we planned our exfiltration from the city to Algeria. We traveled a long way to reach our brother country, Niger. From Niger, we made it to Bamako, safe and sound, exhausted, but well.
So how did you manage to escape from their clutches?
I couldn't even give you a clear answer with God's help. Given the role of the OM in this crisis, I was the target to eliminate from every angle. But it is God who gives life and it is He who takes it back. As for me, I keep my faith, and my mission continues.
All right. So what are your latest updates from the civil front?
You know, when I hear what the media says about Kidal, I'm surprised. The Malian Defense and Security Forces have 100% control over the Adel Hoc district and that of Anafif. The Adel Hoc district is 150 kilometers, from Kidal, and the Anafif district is 112 kilometers from Kidal. So we do indeed have a significant presence of defense and security forces in the Kidal region. But you really have to understand that at the specific time of the questioning, I heard a great many things. Approximately 12,000 fighters have been fully mobilized, and they are not only terrorist forces, they are also separatists coming from the region of Mali. There are fighters who have come from Chad, Sudan, from the Polisario side, from Algeria, to help the separatist terrorist armed groups in northern Mali destabilize the country. The issue is not the question of Kidal. The proof is the planned attacks on Kati, Bamako, Sevare, Gao to prevent any possible reinforcements to Kidal. The proof is the cowardly attack against our Minister of Defense, whose memory I honor here, which aims to destabilize the military institution of our country, which aims to discourage our defense and security forces. But there are not only military branches, there is also a political branch. I heard the name of a well-known imam from Badlabugu currently residing in Algeria. His name came up several times where I was. A Malian politician who recently appeared with prisoners from our country held by the GNIM was mentioned several times. It was an international plan with outside involvement aimed at completely destabilizing Mali and installing these two men at the head of our country. But worse, even worse, the plans also included organizing attacks against civilian populations, especially in the north, particularly in Bamako, creating confusion among the Tuaregs, Arabs, Pools, Dogons, Sorels, to incite the population to revolt and turn Mali into something like Somalia.
All right. You said it yourself, these terrorists are supported by sponsors, but also by Western media. How do you explain this media campaign against our country?
You know, it's very simple to understand. A few weeks ago, I'm not sure if it was a week ago, another country took a strong stance by recognizing Morocco on the issue of the Sahara. A few weeks ago, I'm not sure if it was a week ago, another country took a strong action by recognizing Morocco on the Sahara issue. There are countries that have never accepted this bitter pill, which drove them out of our country. I'll tell you directly, French policy still can't admit its failure, the withdrawal of UN forces from Mali. We are still paying the price for these strong decisions made by the transitional authorities. The failure of the Algiers agreement today, you heard the Algerian president say it, the Malian solution is 90% Algerian. He needs to stop dreaming. This is a Malian problem. The solution can only be Malian, but not in this way.
So that is just a confirmation right there that the terrorists don't control the whole of Kidal. Ladies and gentlemen, and as the intensification of the airstrike continue, how long do you think the terrorists will be able to hold Kidal? The thing is, when you start calling on the human rights watch, you start soft targeting, that is a proof that you can no longer match the Malian Armed Forces on the battlefield. That is the essence of soft targeting, attacking civilian infrastructure. You know, what they're trying to do now is to decentralize the concentration of the Malian Armed Forces. They don't want a situation where all the capability of the Malian Armed Forces will be concentrated on Kidal. So now what they will do is to start having sporadic attacks on civilian infrastructure, which is soft targeting. You are no longer hearing that they are attacking convoys or they are attacking, you know, military base. They are not doing that anymore because they no longer have the personnel capability to launch that type of assault. So what they are doing now is soft targeting and calling on the civil rights watch. So what they are trying to do now is to manufacture dissent, to put pressure on the civilian. This is a typical Western style of destabilization. During the summit in Nairobi, we have President Emmanuel Macron being asked a very, very important question by one of the journalists in Kenya as to why the three Alliance of Sahel states were not invited to this France and African summit in Nairobi, Kenya. And Emmanuel Macron has a couple things to say about, you know, the Alliance of Sahel states. Ladies and gentlemen, let's listen to what the president of France has to say.
There's a coup d'etat in Mali. You don't want France anymore because you don't want to fight against terrorism anymore. We're leaving, as we say in good French. No offense. Unfortunately, current events show that this was probably not the best decision the Malian coup leaders made for their country. And I want to pay tribute here to the memory of our soldiers, far too many of whom fell for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Mali between 2013 and 2020. But we have completely rethought the security relationship, not to withdraw ourselves, but precisely to rebalance it. Everywhere there were bases that had been established, too visible, that were in a way remnants of a bygone era, we transformed them, making them partnerships, as in Gabon. We have rethought this relationship so that it can be rebuilt in a completely new way. In Benin, in Ghana, in Nigeria, we are in the process of inventing a security relationship that does not yet exist, and that is based on partnership. This is West Africa, and it works with real security results in Benin as well as in Nigeria.
Upon his arrival in Nairobi, Kenya, on Sunday, May 10, 2026, President Emmanuel Macron delivered a speech marking the start of the summit, Africa Fora. Regarding Mali and the Sahel countries, Burkina Faso and Niger, here are the key points of this statement. End of the pre-square. Emmanuel Macron stated that the era of exclusive French influence in Francophone Africa has been over since 2017. He justified the choice of holding this summit in Kenya, an English-speaking country, as a symbol of a relationship now based on economic partnerships rather than post-colonial tutelage. He acknowledged the absence of the leaders of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger at this summit. These absences follow the military coups, according to the French president, that occurred between 2020 and 2023, which led to the withdrawal of French forces and a diplomatic break with France. The French president made a point of clarifying that despite these notable absences, West African countries remain present, specifically mentioning the participation of the leaders of Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire. The summit, co-organized with Kenyan President William Ruto, also addresses issues of peace and security. This comes in a context where security pressures, terrorism, and also rebellion remain strong in Mali. This trip to Nairobi is part of France's desire to diversify its alliances on the continent beyond its former colonies. Let's listen to his entire speech, especially when he responds to Kenyan journalist Mr. Emmanuel.
The countries of Africa are not part of this conversation. You know, these countries in the Sahel region, just this question.
Now, for the very first question I have for you, Emmanuel, I just want to clarify and make it absolutely certain that both African countries and Western countries will indeed be present at the meeting. I mean, the president of Senegal, the president of Africa, the president of Gabon, the president of the DRC, and many others will be here. It is quite difficult to claim that North Africa will not be represented in this office. There are 3 specific nations, and I truly regret this, that have decided, because of recent coups and the behavior of the military leadership currently holding power, to distance themselves from the rest of the club, from ECOWAS and other regional partners. That does not mean, however, that West Africa is not a vital part of this meeting. On the contrary, the major leaders of West Africa will be present in attendance and actively participating. And beyond all that, we are also paying close attention to civil society, including the civil society of the Sahel countries and their presence here. We may disagree with governments or regimes, but we do not disagree with the people, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. And all these peoples, we love them, and all these civil societies are involved in this society. There will be many artists, intellectuals, and entrepreneurs who come from. It's somewhat in this continuity that I will answer your question. I have never considered Francophone Africa as a private preserve. And that's exactly what I said in my speech in Ouagadougou in November 2017. And so there is no intention, by being here or by holding this summit, Africa Forward, after the one in Montpellier, which was already an innovation in 2021, no intention to hide anything or whatever. There is simply the intention to say that Africa is a whole. We are the true Pan-Africanists. We believe that Africa is a continent. And this continent has much to build. It is the youngest in the world. So it has an extraordinary demographic dividend. It is the one with the highest growth in the world. Last year it achieved growth slightly higher than that of Southeast Asia. And so we need to look at it in a completely different way. And indeed, it is a continent that I no longer want France to look at from just one perspective, as if it were a private preserve where business leaders would somehow have all the rights or be guaranteed all the contracts simply because it was Francophone Africa. Sometimes some people thought that France provided a kind of guaranteed insurance no matter what happened by being there to make or unmake governments. That's over. Since 2017, that era has ended. First of all, because well before 2017, our companies had already started losing market share in Francophone Africa. It wasn't talked about much, but that was the case because it's competitive Africa, and rightly so. And because I believe in a balanced partnership. And so the transformation we've been making for the past 10 years is a transformation that has consisted of saying, everywhere in Africa we believe in the sovereignty of states and their territorial integrity. There's a coup d'etat in Mali. You don't want France anymore because you no longer want to fight against terrorism. We leave. As we say in good French, no offense. Unfortunately, current events show that this was probably not the best decision the Malian putschists made for their country. And I want to pay tribute here to the memory of our soldiers who have fallen, far too many of them, for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Mali between 2013 and 2020. But we have completely rethought the security relationship, not to withdraw ourselves, but precisely to rebalance it. Everywhere there were bases that had been established, too visible, which were, in a way, the lingering remnants of a bygone era. We have transformed them, making them partnerships, as in Gabon. We have rethought this relationship so that it can be rebuilt in a completely new way. In Benin, Ghana, and Nigeria, we are in the process of inventing a security relationship that does not yet exist, and that is based on partnership. This is West Africa, and it works, with real security results in Benin as well as in Nigeria. We have rethought the economic relationship. This summit is the perfect illustration of that. We have rethought the cultural relationship. In 2017, everyone was telling us cultural restitutions, and they said he talks about it, but he'll never do it. Yesterday, the law that allows for these cultural restitutions for the African continent was enacted. And so all this is to tell you that there is in action a transformation toward this balanced partnership. And West Africa is indeed here present. And France has achieved tremendous successes in West Africa. When I see what we've managed to accomplish in recent years with Benin, whether in cultural or security matters, tremendous success. When I see what we are currently doing with Gabon, when I see, for example, with the president of Senegal, whom I will meet tomorrow, what we are doing in sports, in culture, or regarding the reinvention of our security partnership with regional academies, we have real successes in East Africa, but in West Africa, we are transforming things. And then, alongside that, we are creating an unprecedented continent in what used to be the relationship between France and Africa. Kenya, where none of my predecessors had ever visited before 2019. Nigeria, where we have completely transformed the relationship. South Africa, with whom we have a strong bond. But I could also mention here what we have managed to achieve over the past 2 years with Morocco. Where you speak about our relationship with Africa, Lusophone, there you have it. So I too am looking ahead. And I note that we have transformed everything over the past 10 years and that we have never tried to avoid Francophone Africa. You know, I was in Gabon this spring. This fall, I will be in Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire. That's Francophone Africa. You see, so we keep moving forward. And we are present in all these countries with this renewed partnership that allows us to move forward.
And now he said that France lost a lot of troops, which he paid his respect to the memories of those French troops. But this same man has forgotten that many African troops, a lot of accounts that we've had, some say it's going to about 55,000 and above, fought for France during World War II after the French capitulation, you know, to Nazi Germany. A lot of Africans, you know, 55,000 to less than 100 troops or 200 troops in the Sahel. What account are we going to write that for? And it's even more disastrous, you know, because when the African forces fought for the sovereignty of this, you know, destabilizing state today, you know, when they fought for France at the time, the account of the heroic performance of these forces from Africa, you know, was wiped out of history. When they asked for the payment that was promised to them, you know, they were all neutralized by the French forces. And the French, you know, just because they don't want to look like puppets at the time, They lied to their public that, you know, the Africans did not do nothing. You know, that was very, very disappointing. You know, and Africans were whisked away to fight for the sovereignty of those people at the time against their will. You know, so I don't know what Emmanuel Macron is talking about, that somebody should be grateful. No, you should be grateful for Africa, for what Africa has done for your country. If Africa did not fight for France, Emmanuel Macron would not be where he is today. And it's a shame that a lot of old African puppet leaders continue to dance in front of this young man right here. So that is not the only thing we have noticed. Emmanuel Macron said that, you know, France changed their policies since 2017 and all of that. Ladies and gentlemen, are you aware that after the reconquest of the La Bezenga region, where the Malian territory meets with the Nigerian territory, do you know that when the Malian Armed Forces got in contact with the Islamic State in Sahel province, when they exchanged negotiation with themselves in the form of some cataclysmic lead, you know, that was flying up and down the whole place, the Islamic State in the Sahel province came to a point where they realized that they can no longer maintain this contact with the Malian Armed Forces that was negotiating from a place of superior firepower. So what they did was to evacuate the region, you know, very, very quickly. It was an emergency. According to the information we had, why some of them were running away from the region, you know, the Malian Armed Forces just continue to strike away, you know, all day. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have in Mali right now is a change in what we used to see. Now, when the infantries are being deployed, there are air vectors accompanying them. So I know that recently you've not heard that any Malian convoy was attacked or something, or they ran into an improvised explosive device, because all capabilities are on deck right now, and there is maximum success, ladies and gentlemen. You know, we continue to hear positive results on the battlefield. That is why the terrorists have now shifted from engaging the Malian forces one-on-one, and they're now soft targeting the civilians. So, ladies and gentlemen, when they left the La Bezenga region, we discovered that they were taking refuge in the former French military base in the La Bezenga region. According to the information we got from our intelligence sources, they said there was a negotiation with France for the Islamic State in the Sahel province to use this former French base. Ladies and gentlemen, you can see the terrorists moving out of the former French base in the La Bezenga region. I wonder why the Malian Armed Forces didn't pay attention to this particular region all along. You know, they were staying in the region, and you can see that they were leaving. When the bells continued to ring and the noise of the bells became louder, they had to leave. You can see the terrorists leaving. And when we geolocated, we discovered that this was the former French base. So Emmanuel Macron continues to talk about diplomacy and pretend as if he knows nothing about what is going on in the Sahel on one hand, and on the other hand, he is the master of the J. So this is just the reality of what we are seeing on ground. In the French mainstream media, they've admitted that they are participating. They've admitted that they are monitoring the situation on ground. We've seen the TV5 Monday, you know, monitoring the situation. And they came on social media and they said they were monitoring the situation very closely. And Burkina Faso, Niger, they have seen what is happening, and they have equally banned, you know, all the 9 different French media channels that have been working in the Sahel. So maybe, you know, there will now be media sovereignty and information sovereignty in the Sahel right now. So I think we are entering the dying phase of the Western propaganda media in the Sahel. I did not even imagine that up to 9 French media, you know, information sources are still going to be operational in the Sahel, given, you know, what France have done over the years. But ladies and gentlemen, you know, it's never too late. Now they are moving out. We'll see what happens in the coming days. So ladies and gentlemen, you can see what is going on right now. Now to wrap it all up, you see, Africans don't just pay attention to information like that. You know, most of the time when those people do things, it gets to a point they snitch on themselves a little bit. If you look at this movie right here,
gentlemen, the Middle East is a mess. We all know that, and it's because of us. These are countries rich in mineral resources. It is for these riches that we will be fighting in the next 20 or 30 years. A vast cobalt deposit was discovered in Mali just 2 years ago. At the time, we approached the Malian government for mining rights. They told us that those rights had been granted to the Chinese. So we set about creating the conditions to make sure that wouldn't happen. And last week, one of our Australian subsidiaries, thank you Clam, secured those rights. Our pilot project in Mali has faced a few setbacks, but I am proud to announce to you that it has worked. And if it worked there, there's no reason why it shouldn't work in other mineral-rich countries on the African continent. We create chaos in order to then capitalize on this chaos. We create chaos in order to then capitalize on this chaos. We have a long-term vision here, gentlemen, with colossal profits. Profits that, by comparison, make Iraq and Afghanistan look like insignificant projects.
If you look at that movie, they've actually said some things that this movie is a very old movie, and they said some things in this movie that is actually very related to what is happening on the ground and extensively in all of African countries. You see, when they got to Nigeria, they said they started attacking the Chinese companies, you know, and everywhere they went. You see, the thing is, they talked about an Australian company, you know, and that company is called Okla Mining Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, when I was doing my research on this company, when I was doing my research on this Australian company, I discovered that this company was not only interested in the Malian lithium, gold and cobalt, they were equally interested in the Taudenid Basin region, where they wanted the mining right for the natural gas of Mali and the oil of Mali. So this is the reason why you're having a lot of destabilization in the region of West Africa, most especially the Sahel. And you see how they continue to attack the Sahel region for whatever reason they have. And they are saying this loud, ladies and gentlemen. Exactly what they said in that movie is what is going on the ground, and you can see that they said they've seen that this is working, and you know, they will continue to use this strategy, you know, for the next 30 years or so. You know, if you want to, it's just at this point, it's down to if you want to ignore the obvious. And that is why we have our friend in the ECOWAS now speaking that, you know, if Africa don't unite with Mali right now and, you know, combat this insecurity that came from Libya, that have got into the Sahel, and, you know, if care is not taken, could engulf the whole West Africa, you know.
We do not talk about it. It is as if we are carefully avoiding this question. I think it is time for West Africa to talk about sovereignty. ECOWAS talks about sovereignty, as long as we do not talk about sovereignty. We will always be among the 40 or 50 poorest countries on the planet, because that is also our situation. And it does not fall from the sky. Madam Chair, here we are in the committee. There are people who do not like each other. There are people who do not talk to each other. But I am convinced that when one of us falls, all the others will go and lift him up. We must not watch Mali fall. If Mali falls, we are next. We must not wish for Mali to fall, so that we can say later that it served it right, it should not have left. We must mobilize, we must fight, we must save West Africa, because what is happening in Mali is what awaits all of us together. Thank you.
Everything he said right there is true. If you don't unite with Mali right now, we might face what we don't expect in the future, you know. And it is very, very important for Africans to unite against the insecurity in the Sahel right now. Provide whatever support they can provide, you know, from the media to support in any way. No support is small, you know. Making sure your territory is secured, making sure you confront insecurity in your country and not negotiate, making sure that your territorial integrity is what it is, not just on paper and in reality is different, you know. Africa should unite, you know. Uniting does not mean we eat in the same plate and all of that. No, unite, stand on business, do what you're supposed to do. maintain your territorial integrity. Make sure that the terrorists don't take refuge in your country after destabilizing your neighbor. So the situation in the Sahel is changing, but before every silver lining, there's always a dark cloud. So what we have in the Sahel right now is a situation that is changing for better. The Malians are beginning to restore control and order gradually, and you can see that the terrorists have changed their tactics. It is not the terrorists that the Malians are fighting. Mali is fighting against the West, and I want you to understand right now. So ladies and gentlemen, what do you think about what that ECOWAS representative said right there? So ladies and gentlemen, you can see that the approach of the Alliance of Sahel States is the best approach. You have to negotiate on the battlefield and not to call for any peace deal with some terrorist group and all of that. It doesn't work. And most of the time, I want you to understand something. What these people do is they use the terrorists to attack you, and they send their ambassadors, they send their special envoys to you to talk to you about security. What they do, this is the plan. So when they attack you with the terrorists and you fight to a certain point, they'll send their envoy. What the envoy is there to do is to tell you, like, okay, these are the resources we want. Remember, Rudy Atala came to Mali and said they want lithium and gold in exchange for security. There is no security anywhere. They will only tell their boys to stand down, and we don't even know if truly they tell those boys to stand out or not. If you doubt what I'm saying, look at the situation of DRC. The fatality in DRC continue to rise every day. So ladies and gentlemen, we have no other option than to unite. It is better we support ourselves than to continue to dance around with the imperialists. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not journalism. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a fight for African sovereignty and the soul and spirit of Africa. It's your boy 72 Andre signing out and offset, representing the Andre community. But before I go, do what to hit the like, share, and subscribe button, because if you don't, Andre will cry. Thank you, and God bless you.